Hi, everybody. Good morning. I am really excited today. I have some brand new things to share with you all about the four C's of engineering. And I've actually thrown in a fifth C because I think curiosity is really important too. So I want to make sure that we do this as quickly as possible because I know everybody's busy and we don't want to take too much time. So my goal is to get through everything in about 20 minutes. And the theme of the day is fast, free, and fabulous. So, with that in mind, why don't we go ahead and launch into this? And I want to change one thing before we start. I want to do that. All right. So, while I'm doing the intro and kind of telling you what we're doing today, you might want to go in and pick up the freebie folder right now. So, if you go to, if you just type in your browser or use the QR code you see there, bit.ly/4Cs free. And it is case sensitive, so keep everything lowercase there. And then what's going to happen when you do that is it's going to take you to the blog. And I also want to change one more thing while I'm doing the intro is to show you what the agenda is. But that blog post is going to look like this, and you're just going to scroll down until you see this sign up. And I would recommend using a personal email instead of a school email so that it doesn't get blocked by your spam filters, or it's not as likely to get caught by a spam filter. But you're going to get that email through there. So if you don't see it right after you sign up, give it like a minute or two. And if you don't see it, check your spam folder for that. Okay. And if you're having any trouble, just let me know in the comments or shoot me an email. I'll give you my email at the end. And okay, so I am going to go back to where you can see the sign up code there while you're doing that. So our agenda today is an introduction. So we are here. I'm going to move that circle throughout so that you know where we're at and to keep myself on track as well. And for me, the four C's, we know we want our kids to actually like embody these and demonstrate them, not just be able to recite what they are. So everything that I've been working on for us today is all about that. How do we get them to embody it? How do we get them to demonstrate it in context of our STEM challenges? I think one thing that's really important is that we actually have to practice some of these things in isolation. It's kind of like, a sport like soccer or basketball. You're not always playing game day. Sometimes you're practicing specific things like free throw shots or passing the ball or things like that, right? So what we're going to be doing today is sort of breaking these things out and looking at them isolated. How can we practice them frequently? How can we practice them fast, but effectively, right? And how do we fit them into our day? When you log in or when you grab this freebie folder, I do want to show you one thing. Inside the folder, let me zoom out a little bit here, check my notes. If you follow me, some of these things you might already have. You might even have a lot of them. But what you definitely don't have is these two at the bottom, the week 1 and week 2 of the STEM bell ringers. Because what I've done with some of these 4 C's that we're going to be talking about today, remember, fast, free, fabulous, is I've put them into bell ringer format, some of them. So we're going to be going through that and showing you as we go. So don't worry too much about that. I'm going to close this link out so I don't forget. I don't want to do that. All right. So let's dive right into creativity. So we're going to start with creativity today. One of my favorite things to start with is so simple. It's ridiculous. 8 ways to use blank. And 8 is an arbitrary number. It doesn't have to be 8, but I like to pick a number that's kind of big. So the students will have to stretch, but we show them basically an everyday object, right? So balloons, for example. What are 8 different ways to use balloons? And you use just everyday objects. One thing that I really, really like about this is you can literally just like pick up something in your classroom, pick up a notebook, pick up a pencil. But what you want to do in order to get them to sort of stretch their brains, let me kind of switch into this mode here, is to vary their verbs. So, for example, I'm going to actually use sponge as an example. You're going to get students saying like, oh, well, you could clean the counter or clean the floor or clean this. So what we want to do to help them stretch, I always tell them, your first like 3, 4, 5 are going to be like, they're going to come into your mind as the way you usually would use the objects, right? And so when you catch yourself noticing that you're repeating the same type of way to use it, or the verb is repeating, that's when you want to take a step back and say, okay, let me see if I can choose a new verb on this one. And I always like to also give students an opportunity to sort of expand, or, what if they finish early if we're doing this in bell ringer format and I'm still taking attendance or setting up our activities for the day. I don't want people just wandering around or having nothing to do. So I always give them sort of another option of like, hey, if you're finished early, this is what you can do. So keep drawing your list or sketch your favorite ideas in action. All right. Next up, we're going to go back to this. So these are just some examples of some different everyday objects that I picked up around my house or I found a picture online. Again, I like the physical objects when, especially if you're going to set this up in centers, the physical objects are nice to have, but if you don't have the time, it's always good to have pictures as well. Also, this is great if you're having like a sub, because you don't want to, I don't know about you, but I don't like to leave materials out for subs that I care about at all in any way. Not because of the sub, but just because, you don't know what kind of behavior stuff's going to go on when you're not in the room sometimes. So I like to have pictures as an option also, so that you can assign it out, through Google Classroom and things like that. All right. Before we go further, I want to tell you, I'm going to try to give you like 3 ideas for each of the C's. So the third idea, this is actually Meredith Momgineer, partial drawings. So you give them just part of a drawing and they finish it out. Super simple. This is a freebie. This is linked in your folder in the Start Here file. Okay. All right. Back to this. Next up, we are still in creativity, STEM improv. This is new for me since about last year. I absolutely love this. You have the students take an object, a material, and a function, and they are randomly put together. So you either can cut it out of cards. This is inside your folder. This is the Back to School STEM freebie, and it's also inside the bell ringers. In fact, maybe it'll be easier to share it with you through the bell ringer. I'm going to go back up here. Okay, yeah. So inside your either file, the week 1, week 2, or Back to School STEM, you'll find an introduction. This is really helpful to introduce the activity to your kids because it includes some troubleshooting and some things that they can expect, because this doesn't always go smoothly the first time. And I also want to say about that, sometimes when things don't go smoothly, it's because the activity isn't the right activity for your kids. Sometimes when an activity doesn't go smoothly, it's because it's exactly the kind of thing that they need practice with. And I find with curiosity, creativity especially, our kids need more time to practice flexing those muscles, right? And so it can feel, it's like, think about if you had been sedentary for months and months, and then all of a sudden you go to the gym. You're not going to be lifting 200-pound weights right away, right? You have to build up. So this kind of applies with creativity and curiosity and critical thing. Really, all the activities, we need practice. So try to be patient and try not to get frustrated if your kids have a slow start, right? If they're struggling with it, keep at it. It's an indication that they really, really, really need these skills, right? So in STEM improv, they basically spin the wheel, or you can pull those papers out randomly to choose an object and a material and a function. And all the materials are unconventional. And we do that on purpose because we want them to come up with like really bizarre ideas and really have to be imaginative and creative in order to do that. And there's like a little planning sheet there for them as well, so that if they're struggling, you'll see in the student introduction video, if you haven't tried this out yet, if they're struggling with something, that they can go to those questions first and kind of describe the struggle, and that can kind of help get them unstuck and out of that brain freeze, if that makes sense. All right, we're moving on to collaboration, which means I need to change. We are here. So now we are on collaboration. Inside your file, you are going to find a freebie lesson that walks kids through like defining and making sure we're all on the same page. One of the things that makes it most difficult with the 4 C's, in my experience, is sometimes we teach, sometimes we tell. And a lot of times with the 4 C's, and I'm admitting this for myself right now, sometimes with the 4 C's, we tell them, or we sort of assume they think of, that's my timer to let me know I'm halfway through, 10 minutes in, and I wanted to be done in 20 for you. We tell them, collaborate, be creative, communicate with everybody, but we don't ever sometimes define what that means. What does it look like? What does it sound like? And this lesson will help you walk through that. So I'll let you go through that on your own. I will not belabor that point too much. Okay, wait. And one more thing. There's a 4 C's rubric inside your folder as well. That is another thing that helps you get on the same page with your kids. I think that it can be really helpful to choose a STEM challenge that's really simple, like a index card tower. On my YouTube channel, which is linked in your folder, there are 52 challenge walkthroughs, so you can just pick one that appeals to you. But have the students really focus on collaboration. Say, today what we're going to do, yes, we're going to build this card tower and we want to build it as high as possible, or we're going to build this card tower and we want it to be at least 18 inches, but we want your collaboration to be really effective. So everybody plans individually, and then you have a group design or a partner design come together, and you have to choose at least one idea from each partner in your group design. That makes sense. And then have them really review, give them that time to reflect, to look back at their 4 C's rubric and focus in on the collaboration line and really analyze, how do they do? And don't expect that they're going to do perfectly. It's okay for them to like analyze it and say, you know what? We didn't do as well as maybe we thought we could. Well, okay, great. What are we going to do differently next time? So above all, we want to make sure we're on the same page with collaboration. You can do that individual versus group design planning, and make it something that you give time to reflect on after a challenge. I use that 4 C's rubric. I like that for the first month or two before I switch into using different rubrics. All right, next up, we are into communication. Okay, there is inside your folder, this is called Speak, Listen, Draw. What I really like about this is it's easy to replicate, right? Because here are 4 drawings right here that are in your folder, but you can easily have students create their own and like have this stockpile in your classroom where you have student created cards. I would do it on like index cards, or even full sheets of paper, and just put them in page protectors so they stay safe. And then they can go through and use those. And what they do is there's a director and a drawer. So the person who's the director is looking at the image, and they're trying to explain to the person who's drawing, who cannot see the image, how to recreate it perfectly. There's a full video walkthrough inside the Start Here file in your folder that kind of like shows an example. This works for all ages. And there are ways to kind of put it on steroids and make it more challenging and difficult and interesting. And you can use this with very young students as well. In fact, almost everything today, maybe not that collaboration lesson, but just about everything else will work with, kinder through 8th at least. But some of the response pages that I use wouldn't work for like a K1, maybe even a 2nd grade, depends on what their reading level is. But almost everything in here can still be done. You just wouldn't have them use those reflection pages. They would, if they're not reading or writing yet, they can respond verbally in many cases. So just keep that in mind, okay? And if you have questions, please let me know in the comments, and I will look at that at the end. I'm just seeing a comment now. I just remembered to look over that. They need the practice of productive struggle. Absolutely, Karen. I 100% agree with you. There are ways to guide them in the struggle. Guiding questions is helpful. Explicitly teach how to collaborate. 100%. And there are things in the teaching guides and some of these freebies that will help you, and even on the slides themselves. So we will. Oh, I need 2 more on communication. 2 more ideas for communication for you. One is an exchange program. This came from actually a teacher in Auburn. I want to give her credit, but I can't remember her name. She does a thing with communication where she'll take, and this can help with collaboration as well. During a STEM challenge where you might have like 4 kids working in a team, 5 minutes in, she'll call time. She'll let them know ahead of time this is going to happen. She'll pick one person from each team, and they have to transfer or exchange to the next team. The next team has to get the new person caught up, and then they need to keep working together. So she might do 1 to 3 transitions of like changing different people from group to group. This helps too if you have like a dominant student who's always kind of like taking over, designs. Make that person an exchange student. It's really hard to go into a group design that's already in progress and try to like bend people to completely throw it away and take on your idea. It's also really a good practice of communication. Another thing she does is a silent STEM challenge. This would work probably well with something simple like an index card tower, where they're not allowed to talk and they have to do all their communicating through gestures or writing, but mostly through gestures because they don't have a lot of time, right? Okay, critical thinking. I think we're on to the next one. We are. Got to change my little banner here so we know where we're at. Critical thinking. All right, I have three great ideas for you. First one up, would you rather STEM questions? So I put these into three categories. So the first category is questions that ask students to consider what they would rather do as the person who is making, designing, or engineering that creation. The second category is considering it from an end user perspective. And the third category is looking at tools or technologies, putting them up against each other and choosing which one would you rather give up forever. This is such a great discussion starter. I really enjoy it. I actually want to peek back at my, oops, sorry. I keep doing that. My would you rather in the week 1 and week 2, off in the margin. This is where some of these extra notes to sort of dive deeper, make it a little bit more. Well, I'm going to use the word challenging, right? You have to put a little bit more thought into things. And for each type of question, there's a different thing to do as an early finisher in the would you rather cards. Okay. So you're going to get 2 examples of those. And then what we have kids do is list the pros and cons of each decision or each option in their decision, and then make their choice, explain their reasoning, and then list any questions that come to mind when they're analyzing these 2 designs or putting them up against each other. And then I always ask them to circle the one they're most curious about, because at the end of the week, there's a choice board option. We'll talk more about that later. Okay, next up, I'm going to talk about this versus that, analyze this versus that. So we're going to take in this one 2 different designs that solve the same problem or a similar problem. And then what we ask students to do is identify what's the problem that can be solved by both designs, list the strengths and the weaknesses of each option, right? And then list any questions that come to mind when you're analyzing these designs. Now, the way that I have it set up right here, this is bell ringer format, right? So this is kind of like a lighter lifting version, right? We want them to be able to finish in like 5 minutes. But you can expand this, extend it, look at what it says to do in the margins as an early finisher if you want it to be kind of more robust. There's also different options. Actually, I'm going to pause. I'm not going to say that because I'm running low on time. But there's lots of options within this folder, right? That you can take a look at to expand. Okay, let me go back to this. Oh, these are just some other examples of the would you rather kind of series. And this is the analyze this versus that I just showed you. And some other examples. So 2 objects that solve a similar problem. Just like the first one I showed you, that was 8 ways to use fill in the blank. This versus that is another one where you can use really common everyday objects that solve everyday problems. And you can use images for that, or you can use the physical objects. Now, if you're running a center where, oh no. Oh no, what happened? Okay. If you were running a center, there you go, where you're actually in class with your students on this, I definitely recommend trying to bring in physical objects. But if you're running this as a bell ringer and they're all staying at their desk, or you're using it as subplans, this is an instance where it's really nice to have photographs as well. But it's another thing where you can just pull 2 objects in your class that solve a similar problem and just like hold them up. Fast, free, fabulous, right? Easy things to do, quick things to do, but start these discussions and shift their minds into, thinking like scientists as they move into your STEM lesson or your science lesson or really any point in the day. Okay. All right. Next up, I think we are on curiosity. But now I'm a little bit worried about, okay, there it is. Whew. All right. So see, notice, think, wonder. Well, first of all, I do want to say that curiosity is sort of woven into a lot of these things. You'll notice that I ask kids when you look at it, the STEM improv, would you rather, and analyze this versus that, all have opportunities for kids to generate questions, because there's something different that happens in your brain when you're asked to generate questions for something. So as see, notice, think, wonder, we give them, again, it can be a physical object in the room or photographs or images. And we give them an uncomfortable amount of time, quiet time, silent time to look, to examine, to see, notice, think, and wonder. And then one of the things that's really helpful is to actually play music, like classical music, and inside your folder in the week 1 and week 2 bell ringers, one of the first slides has a link to a playlist that I like, because I think it helps if it's like it's almost meditative, right? We give them such a long time to look at the picture that eventually more things start coming out. It's helpful to start with images or objects that are innately or like very interesting to look at. But as your kids get better at it, it becomes more challenging to give them something really mundane like a pencil. But I do like to start with animals and plants because most of us can find something interesting to look at. So this page is in there for you. I'm not going to read it to you, but it kind of just explains what goes on each side. I consider the left side sort of the easy lifting. It's just literally, what do you see? What do you observe? On the right side, that's where you get your brain engaged and drawing conclusions, making connections between things that you already know, coming up with our questions about things and really letting your mind wander. It is for me, I actually really enjoy this activity because it's super meditative. You might have kids on certain days come up with way more on the left-hand column than they do on the right-hand column. That's okay. I'm more interested in what's in the right-hand column, but it's not a problem to focus on the left. These are observation skills, right? This is going to be great for science regardless. But you can sort of see in this example, it might be hard for you to see where you're watching it if you don't have it in full screen, but like the questions start to get sort of more out there. And that's what happens as the time expands. I would take, when you're first starting with this, like 3 minutes and then expand it to more like 5. But then one of the things they can do is, again, circle a question that they're interested in, because on our choice board, whether we use that as another bell ringer or we use that as a center rotation, they can go in and see, like, what are the questions I circled this week that I thought were interesting? And I can take one or more of those and research those and report back. Another thing you can do as an extension on this, like this last one says, what would it be like if a human's neck were as long as a swan's? It's missing an apostrophe. Sorry for that typo. One of the things that they can do from there is, I would, depending if you're a self-contained classroom, you could have them go through and like research, like what is the form versus function, the function and the structure of things. Why are their necks so long? But I would also allow writing a story. Like, what would your life be like? What would a day in the life be like if your neck was as long as a swan's? And how might it be different if it's just you and everybody else has their normal human necks? Or if all humans had those necks, what would that be like? What would that world look like? What would an image be? Or like, what would you draw? I would even maybe have them, even just letting them draw that picture would be something I'm keen to let them do with that sort of thing. Okay, move this here. Okay, so bell ringer versus sub plans and different kinds of formats. So I know I've gone over, but it won't be that much longer, I promise. Inside the folder, okay, let me go back all the way to the top. Okay, so these are set up. They link straight to the type of activity. These 5 that I've put in here as bell ringers, I put them in here because they can be done in 5-minute versions, and they can also be expanded. If we're doing these as bell ringers, I'm going to take like 5 minutes to do each. Here's that focus music playlist that I told you about. If I want to make this either a center rotation, or I want to leave it for a sub lesson plan, I would take this entire week and condense it into one day. So if you're doing the math, 5 activities, 5 minutes would only be 25 minutes. But if you actually take a look into the margins, for example, with the STEM improv, I would just probably, in 5 minutes, they're probably only going to have time to do this page or this page. They're not going to have time to do both. You can expand this, but then all the other ones as well, as they're going through, if you see something here off to the side, this is a way to expand it. So you can really fill, and of course we have the choice board too. So if you put all these things together, you can fill 25 minutes all the way up to like 55 minutes to an hour. So I like that there's versatility here and you have these 2 weeks, right? So you can do one, try them out as bell ringers, and keep one as sort of like emergency sub plans. And none of them require any materials. So even if you don't have like one-to-one technology in your classroom, you could either print these response pages or just have just project them and have students basically, quadrant out their notebook and fill them out that way. Okay. So it's like meant to be very, very simple. Oh, I took off my, am I on Curiosity? Oh, no. Okay. So I was like, oh, wait, I took off my banner. Here it is. So now we're on the freebie list. And just want to wrap this up quickly before I take a look and see if we have any questions that I need to answer. Fast and slow. Okay. So I wanted to find ways that you could do this quickly, right? Practice things quickly. And in the grand scheme of things, a 5-minute practice per day is fast, right? But when we look at the skill we're practicing, like the see, notice, think, wonder, for example, it's 3 to 5 minutes, but it's a really slow way to practice it for the students. It gives them more time to get their brains into that mode of thinking like scientists. And it will sometimes feel a little uncomfortable for them at first because these are muscles we don't often ask them to flex, or we don't give them enough practice and time and space to breathe because we often are trying to cram so much in to such a small amount of time that doesn't create a good brain space or a good environment for creativity, for developing curiosity. And so our students really, we should expect this sort of almost as a defense mechanism, have learned not to waste time on those skills because there's no time, right? We're going to be moving on to the next thing in 2 seconds anyway. So why be curious about something? Why ask a question about something I'm never going to get to follow up? Which is one of the things we do want to make sure we give them time to do. And that's why I put that choice board in there, is from time to time. Doesn't even have to be maybe once a week if you're self-contained, and it might be a different amount of time otherwise if you're like an elective teacher. But we want to make sure that we have some time at some point for them to actually revisit something that they were curious about and explore it more. So we want to give them that time. We want to make sure we're not just telling them to do the 4 C's, that we are teaching them and giving them practice. Remember to go through some of those extensions to make that practice deeper over time. And you want to make sure that you follow through, like I said, with the time to reflect, research, and share. If your kids are struggling, one of the best things you can do is do whole class versions of this or small group versions of any of these activities. And that will help them sort of like figure it out as we go. And the more opportunities they have to actually share what they've done with each other, will also kind of create this buy-in, because they'll learn from each other, but they also like to try to entertain each other, especially with the STEM improv. They like to debate, would you rather, and analyze this versus that. 8 ways can be really entertaining as well. You can even have like different contests for like, your favorite way or the most unexpected way to use whatever, a sponge. So there's lots of different ideas, right, that you can go with for this. Inside your freebie folder, you have those first 2 weeks that are free. If you like them, if you look at them and you like them and you think you want more, there's a 20-week bundle. And because I just missed the site-wide sale on TPT, I marked it 20% off for the next couple of days. If you're watching this and it's not those couple of days, anytime there's a TPT, Teachers Pay Teachers site-wide sale, this will be 20% off. So just hang out and wait a while because they have about 4 of them a week, right? I am going to check the questions and see. Science tub ideas. Yes, you could put these into science tubs. Yay. I love them too. I hope you enjoy. Let me know when you guys start using these. Let me know how it's going. Let me know if you have troubleshooting you need help with. And I will show you actually too on the 20-week. Let me reshare this. Let me take this banner off while we're talking about it as well. Can I just take it off from here? Remove. Oh, I removed the wrong thing. Okay, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to keep talking. Inside the 20-week bundle, if you decide you want to take a look at that and explore it, the things that are different about it versus the 2 weeks that you get in the freebie folder. So in the freebie folder, I've given you the Google Slides version of everything, but in the actual 20-week bundle, you get the printables as well. And you can print those out as like task card size. Or as I was saying before, you could do them full size and put them in page protectors or laminate. They work well. I think I would, because I'm cheap, I would probably print them out in the task card size. And if you have like a laminator at school, I'd laminate them. So everything, there's full teacher guides in this as well. I didn't put the full teacher guides in the freebie because you're watching this. So you got a lot of the little like tidbits and tips and tricks. But you can always reach out to me too. If you start using this and you're not sure about something, just let me know. I'm always happy to answer the questions. I will bring in my email address at the end. Hold up 1 second. I think it's right. Oh, it's not. I better put the bit.ly up though. Okay, I'll come back to it. I'll come back to it and show you my address or my email address in a minute. And then I have it set up as the bell ringer format. So you get like all 20 weeks. So you can assign them out really easily in Google Classroom. And as I was saying earlier, if you want to, you can either take these as 20 weeks of bell ringers, or you can pull out a couple of those weeks and use them as subplans or centers. They're great for emergency subplans. And then I have like the list out by week of what's going on. There are extra slides for each of the different things, and you get all of like the activities. And this one has the back to school STEM. It has the fall. I'm not going to click through all of them. Fall STEM improv, winter STEM improv, the full would you rather set, the full analyze this versus that, the full creativity bell ringers, and then the full science, see, notice, think, wonder for plants and animals, which is actually still a growing bundle. So by the end of this month, it'll have, it already right now has plants, invertebrates, and birds, and then like a mixed animal set. And so by the end of the month, I'll be adding mammals, fish, reptiles, and amphibians as well. Okay, now we take these out. We go back to the comments. All right. Yes, giving students choice is needed. The choice board is so great. And one of the things I really like too is a lot of them, as I keep mentioning, the early finishers options, there's usually more than one option, so that they are more likely to do it when they get to choose it themselves. And usually because I can't make up my mind because I have different ideas that I like them to do. I need a way to encourage or teach writing during these. My kids resist writing anything. Maybe adapt the $2 summary idea or $2, $1 science response. Not sure I get the last part of that. But with the teaching of writing, I think that one of the things, as Karen mentioned, that's helpful is just having the choice. If you're looking to teach specific writing skills, I don't know. I just wouldn't, for me, I wouldn't get too hung up on that. When we're in science and when we're in STEM, I had a principal say to me once that an English language learner should be able to get an A in your science class, even if they are not fluent in the language, right? They're ELs, right? And that changed the way I really looked at science and STEM. I do want to reinforce my writing skills and my reading comprehension and all of that because it's all kind of, it's all connected, right? But I always want to put first and foremost, what were my science objectives here? What are my STEM objectives here? And so if the writing isn't like up to par, I don't mind too much. And especially if I'm looking at this in bell ringer format, I don't care about complete sentences because I'd rather them get more ideas out than to focus too much on the, on the writing. And then one more thing I'll say about that, if you're having reluctant writers, giving them more time to discuss is helpful. Discuss before they write. Give them time to share their ideas with their peers, get ideas from their peers, and have a full discussion. And then when it's time to write, they have all those ideas in mind. So that has always helped me as well. When students are having trouble with writing, give them more time to talk, discuss, explore with their peers. Okay. Yay. Thanks, Missy. I really appreciate that. Okay. And Karen had an idea here. Give them a choice of writing prompts. All right, great. Oh, my principal is pushing it with the writing. Yes, okay. So sometimes things are not inside of our control completely. So we can't always do things exactly the way we might want to do them. So yeah, I still would try to keep the balance. Not to say you're not going to do what they say to do, but keep your main focus on your science and your STEM. Pull in those writing pieces, use these different ideas with choice, with discussion. It'll come. It'll come. Okay. Okay. Yes. The sharing and the talking helps a lot. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, yes, the music. So helpful with all of these things, right? With especially see, notice, think, wonder, but with STEM improv, everything that's in the bell ringer bundle, honestly. I think using the music, if you have a means to do that, helps the students kind of like understand like, okay, now we're shifting into thinking like scientists, thinking like STEM professionals, and we're quietly going into our brain, right? I just think it's such a great cue and it reminds them to stay quiet while they're doing it. So definitely hands down use the music if you can. It doesn't have to be my music, but I gave you some good some options of what I like to listen to when I'm working. Um, because I like classical when I'm working. But sometimes I'll listen to I didn't put this on the list, but sometimes I'll listen to anything piano, almost anything piano, or just ambient noise. But I find that ambient noise is not as effective in a classroom because there's already ambient noise in the class. You don't need ambient coffee shop sounds. You've already got ambient classroom sounds. So just move into, I like piano, as I said. Make sure your autistic students can handle the change beforehand. I might have missed the comment before that. Fast, fabulous, free, right? Simplistic ideas, but that can really be amazing discussion starters, and really get students to sort of like stretch their brains and grow how they're approaching how they look at everyday objects. To me was really important too, right? Because there's wonder in all of it. As far as I'm concerned. And one of the things I did want to say about STEM improv earlier that I forgot to say was that because there's such crazy ideas, when you start like connecting the material and the function and the objects that kind of don't necessarily go together, I always like to sort of like remind kids about like cell phone. Like kids wouldn't know, but like adults know, like the cell phone didn't exist, like this is a crazy idea. This is like an insane idea. So one of the things I tell students to do if they're getting stuck is to ask themselves, how would this work in a cartoon or a sci-fi movie or a video game? And that sort of helps get them unstuck because it doesn't have to be a real design, but maybe not all real designs, but a lot like the really innovative designs that have like changed our lives, airplanes and cars and laptops and iPads and iPhones started as an insane idea that could only be real in fiction. And I love the idea of like telling us like this is us practicing that. Like where do innovative ideas come from? Okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop, but if I missed your question, I promise I'll go back and look for it later and I will answer you in the chat. Thank you so much, Margaret. I'm so appreciative of that. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Let me know how those bell ringers go. And I wanted to show one more time. I'll put the link. I'll put the link inside the what's it called? The post. I'll put the link inside the post to the freebie folder. If you missed it, make sure that you get it. And my email address as well. Oh, here it is. Here's the bit.ly for you if you missed it. So 4Cs free, bit.ly/4Cs free. And that'll take you to the blog post where you can sign up and grab everything for free. You can contact me by DMing me wherever you're watching this or put it in the comments, or you can email me. It's Carrie. My first name is right there on the screen, Carrie@feelgoodteaching.com. Feel Good Teaching is all one word. So that's it. Bye for now. Have a wonderful weekend. And I'm sure that we will see each other soon.